pony. You know, the only one issue he was pushing, John Turner, was the free trade issue. But nevertheless, you know, he did make that decision. Some people, Patrick Gossage has told us in the last couple of days that they were trying to push other issues as well. But Turner decided this was his issue, this was the fight of his life. He wanted to stick on this one issue and to try and coalesce the anti-free trade vote around the Liberals.
But that decision came a little late into the campaign, perhaps. The decision by the Liberal Party, Peter, to go with that 40-point platform, very left-leaning, very costly, at a cost of $30 billion, really was something that became a liability for them. It enabled Mulroney to go after Turner and start talking about the $30 billion man, to present the Liberals as incompetent and so on. So that, I think, was a major mistake in their campaign in retrospect.
Okay, now you've got a number of interesting things for us to look at now in terms of Tory newcomers. We've spent a lot of time talking about some of the Tories who have lost tonight, some prominent people like Flora MacDonald. Tell us about the newcomers.
Well, Peter, the Conservatives will have plenty to choose from in terms of possible newcomers for the cabinet. Let's look at some of the prominent Conservatives they can draw on. Ross Reid, elected tonight in St. John's East, is someone who probably won't make it into an early cabinet thing, but could be a later possible for a later reshuffle, possibly next summer or next year. Another one they can draw on is Gilles Loisel, elected in Langelier. I used to share an office with him in Paris when he was a foreign correspondent, a strongly nationalist Quebecer. Mulroney's been very successful in getting that type of person into the thing. He would be a very strong possibility for a Quebec City cabinet minister for the Conservatives. No newcomer here. David MacDonald, the old veteran red Tory, who's being billed in Tory circles as someone who might take the Minister of State for External Affairs, looking after foreign aid. In Winnipeg South, we have Dorothy Doby, the first woman president of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce. If Brian Mulroney's looking for prominent new distinguished women to go into his cabinet, she is definitely one of them. And in Regina, Wascana, Larry Schneider, the former Regina mayor, is another possibility. So there is quite a lot to choose from there. In a sense, it's going to be easier for Brian Mulroney to make his cabinet because he has fewer people to choose from, but he's also got enough to get a pretty good lot of talent in there.
Well, you know, there are some holes to fill in that Tory cabinet, but one that won't need to be filled is that one of Deputy Prime Minister and all the other assorted portfolios that are attached to Don Mazankowski's name these days. He's joining us from his riding in Vegreville. Mr. Mazankowski, let me start by congratulating you on your re-election tonight.
Thank you very much, Peter.
So tell me what it all means, Mr. Mazankowski. You are, you got your supporters along there tonight. Tell me what it all means in terms of tonight. You did suffer a lot of losses in different parts of the country. Some familiar faces that you know well won't be coming back this time. But overall, you've got some pretty big numbers to hang up on the wall. You do have the second majority government and the push ahead with free trade. Your thoughts on what tonight's mandate means?
Well, that is indeed unfortunate. I'm really sorry about the cabinet ministers that have gone down to defeat. I guess these things happen in an election, but we're very pleased with the strong mandate that has been given to us to carry on another 4 years, and particularly the clear mandate on the trade agreement and our whole economic policy. The trade is very much involved as a part of our economic policy, and so therefore it means that we can continue to build a strong economy and ensure that the regions are well cared for and ensure that there are jobs and opportunities that are created as a result.
So tell me about how the big turnaround happened, because I'm sure you've heard and you've read a lot of articles that suggest that you've been partly responsible for the turnaround in Tory fortunes in the past year and a half. The Prime Minister giving a lot of work for you to do in a number of different portfolios. We run out of all the names of the different portfolios that you have. What do you mark the change in Tory fortunes in the past year or two?
This is all a team effort, and it's sticking to the agenda. And we've done it over the last 4 years, and we did the same thing during the election campaign. And so therefore, if we can continue to stick to our agenda, now that we've been given a clear mandate from the people of Canada, I think you'll see the growth and prosperity in this country continue. Okay,
one last point to you, Mr. Mazankowski, and I guess it's what you say to Canadians who voted against the Tories tonight. As you've seen, it's somewhere around 56, 57%. A lot of them will say that they voted against you because of free trade. The free trade deal does go ahead, but do you think there will be some need to hold out an olive branch to those people who you know felt very emotional and very passionate about their argument on this deal? What do you say to them tonight?
Well, the Prime Minister has been very successful in uniting the country and healing the wounds of the nation. When you go back to that period of 80 to 84, the country was divided, there was animosity and acrimony, and he has removed that, and he has tremendous skills in that regard, and I have no hesitation in saying that he will perform equally as well in this 4-year period.
All right, Mr. Mazankowski, we thank you for taking some time to talk with us tonight. I know you got a nice little party going on there in the background. They love those parties in Vegreville.
Wish you were here. Wish you were here, Peter.
Okay. Thanks again. Okay, let's update the latest situation out in British Columbia. Don Newman has been watching the tallies go up on the board in BC. What's the latest, Don?
Peter, the NDP are continuing to run very strongly in British Columbia. They said they would, and that indeed is what they're doing. We're going to take a look specifically in a moment at the area of the Okanagan, but first let's see how they are standing. The NDP have picked up 12 seats, all of them from the Tories. As you can see there, the Liberals just holding on to Vancouver Quadra, John Turner's riding. The total vote in BC, though, tells quite an interesting story. It tells that it's actually not as much the NDP and the Liberals who are hurting the Tories as it is other parties. For instance, the NDP and the Tories are running almost neck and neck, but look at that. The NDP are almost the same as they were 4 years ago. The Tories have dropped 11%, and a lot of that vote has gone to the Western Reform Party and the Christian Heritage Party, two parties to the right of the Conservative Party, but in fact they're electing a lot of NDP members tonight. In the Okanagan Centre, this is a new riding that it takes in mainly the city of Kelowna, though. The Tories are holding on at the moment. Al Horning is an alderman in Kelowna, and he is leading Brian McIver, who has run provincially before for the NDP, a margin there of 335 votes. Another Okanagan riding, Okanagan-Shuswap, it is Lyle McWilliams of the NDP. He has represented the area provincially before, and he is holding a lead at the moment of 547 votes over Jake Spoor, who owns an orchard in the area. Part of this riding used to belong to Nelson Rees when it was called Kamloops-Shuswap, so the NDP doing well there is not that big a surprise. In Okanagan-Similkameen Merritt, Fred King, who was an MP in the last parliament, the last couple of parliaments, is holding a lead of only 7 votes at the moment over Jack Whitaker, who's been involved in municipal politics in the Soyuz. That is a very close race. And let me show you one other riding from BC, not from the Okanagan, Vancouver South. The Speaker of the House of Commons, the first one elected by MPs, has been elected tonight again in his own riding of Vancouver South. Even though he ran a non-partisan campaign, he wouldn't take part in any of the political issues, Peter. He said as Speaker, he had to be non-partisan. He ran on the Tory ticket, though, and he's been re-elected.
All right. In terms of John Fraser, though, he doesn't automatically become the new Speaker, does he?
Well, no, this is just his first election. He now has to win a second election in the House of Commons. Anybody can run for Speaker in the House of Commons if they don't take their name off the ballot, although he can at least argue that he has some experience, which is more than most people can say in the House of Commons these days. But there will be a second election. It'll take place as soon as the Prime Minister calls the House back.
Don, it's fascinating looking at how the seats are falling into place for the NDP in BC to see that part of the reason is why they're having classic two-way races here. What really worried New Democrats during the campaign when they saw the Liberals up to 26, 27, even 30% in the opinion polls during the campaign, that would eat into their vote, but they've fallen way back, the Liberals now. Basically, the reason the NDP are doing so well there is that these are classic two-way rather than three-way races.
Well, actually, the Liberal vote is up a little, but it's not up as much as the votes of the Western Reform and the Christian Heritage Party. So while the NDP really haven't gone anywhere in terms of increasing their vote from 4 years ago, the Tories have been losing a lot of votes, not few to the Liberals, but particularly to these other parties that are to the right of the Tories. And that's really what is giving the NDP the big boost up.
All right, I want to talk about a couple of things right now because we're getting ready for two things to happen in the next little while. You'll see John Turner going before an audience in Vancouver Quadra in his riding to thank his supporters for his re-election tonight. But he will use that opportunity also to address the nation and to talk to Canadians from coast to coast, many of whom have supported his party tonight. They've more than doubled their seats, and that is to his credit. But yet, nevertheless, the Conservatives have won a majority government. We will also be seeing the Conservative leader and the Prime Minister, Brian Mulroney, address the crowd in Charlevoix at Baie-Comeau, at his hometown tonight. It's always interesting to see what happens, who speaks first in a situation like this. One assumes Brian Mulroney is waiting for John Turner to speak first, although you can never be sure on those assumptions until it actually happens. Well, here we go, live to Baie-Comeau. Brian Mulroney and Milo Mulroney taking a walk. It's been very snowy out there today in Baie-Comeau, heading up towards the, let's see, they're getting into the, The campaign bus, there's a bus that Wendy Mesley knows inside and out because she spent most of the past 7 weeks hurtling back and forth across the country on it. The Maroonies getting in the bus, heading over to the arena in Baie-Comeau, where they will be, where the Prime Minister will be making his comments to the nation as well. Wendy, David, Eric, Don, it gets back to this question, obviously a night for rejoicing for the Tories. They've made some history tonight, but it was the kind of campaign where a lot of emotions and passions were drawn out. And one does have to wonder, you know, Don Mazankowski sort of hinted at it tonight, that he expects the Prime Minister to play his conciliator's card here to try, and he's never going to get those people's votes, but he does have to get them on side somehow if the bitter divisions are to stop. Wendy.
Seeing that bus again, I lived on that bus for 1.5 months, and it reminds me of every time that we went to an event, just how emotional the free trade debate became. Everywhere we went, there were protesters, there were hecklers in the room. Sometimes people would get into squabbles outside on the sidewalk, and I'm sure that Brian Mulroney knows that there is a lot of healing to be done with this huge majority tonight. I think he's got to reassure all the Canadians that voted against free trade in this election that they will be taken care of and that he is aware of their concerns. But obviously this is a big moment for him tonight. No other Tory leader has ever succeeded in putting down roots in the province of Quebec. He's a native son, never let Quebecers forget it, and it's paid off.
All right, well, we will pick up this discussion in just a few moments' time, but the former Prime Minister, Joe Clark, has joined us from his Yellowhead riding tonight, where he has been declared re-elected. And Mr. Clark, I congratulate you on the one hand, but you were warning us over the past couple of weeks. We were in a tight race there with Preston Manning, and it looked that way for most of the evening.
I was very pleased to have the support of the people of Yellowhead. Yeah, we had a tight race, but I think the election has been a good result for the country and a good result for this constituency. And
we noticed, as I'm sure you've talked to Maureen McTeer in the past couple of hours, the Husband and Wife Act in the House of Commons, unfortunately, I guess for you, is not going to happen, but it was close there for a while. What did you have to say to Maureen?
Well, she would have been a first-class member of Parliament. She fought a tough campaign, and she didn't win, and but she did very well. And I'm naturally disappointed she didn't win, but that happens in politics, and there may well be other opportunities in the future.
All right, let's get back to the big picture now. We were just having a discussion when you joined us about how the Prime Minister handles the speech to the nation. He's just left his hotel, heading over to the arena in Baie-Comeau. Surely, we all acknowledge that the fact the Tories have won the second majority government in a row, history in the making here tonight for Tories in this century, but you're an old politician. You've seen the bitter divisions that have come up in the country back and forth over this campaign on the free trade issue. How does he and how do you reach out to Canadians who voted against you on this particular election because of the free trade deal and the emotion and the passion that it has instilled? How do you reach out? Can you reach out?
Well, remember, one of the skills of this government and of this Prime Minister is precisely in reconciling differences in the country. When we were elected in 1984, there were deep divisions in Canada. We had to deal with them, and we did. There may well be divisions that endure beyond the election campaign. We'll deal with them. We have a mandate in the election. There was obviously some disagreement, a lot of misunderstanding about what we were trying to do. But there is a mandate to carry on with the program that we proposed in the election, and we'll do that, and we'll do it in the spirit of bringing the country together that has guided the first 4 years of this government.
Mr. Clark, we do thank you for joining us tonight. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Joe Clark joining us from his successful re-election headquarters in Yellowhead in Alberta, where he won his seat once again tonight. Now, the overall numbers, we have them with the Tories somewhere in the over 170 range. There they are at 170, the Liberals at 82, the NDP at 43. We'll be back in a moment.
All 19 ridings in southwestern Ontario have been accounted for. The PCs have elected a total of 12 seats, the Liberals a total of 5, and the NDP 2. Good evening and welcome to CBC Windsor as we continue to cover and analyze the riding results in our area. Let's look now at some numbers, David.
Starting off with Windsor, Lake St. Clair, where the former biology professor from the University of Windsor, former Alderman Howard McCurdy, has been re-elected to the House of Commons.
In 1984, Herb Gray won this seat by just over 2,000 votes, and tonight he took it by over 11,000 votes. Liberal incumbent Herb Gray going back to Ottawa.
In the riding of Kent, 56-year-old farmer Rex Crawford has defeated the incumbent. The Elliot Hardy had been in there since 1984.
What happens across the country is usually what happens in Sarnia-Lambton, and indeed that is what happened tonight, as incumbent PC Ken James has been returned to Ottawa, 19,304 votes.
Well, there in the riding of Lambton Middlesex, there was an upset. The Liberal Ralph Ferguson defeated the Progressive Conservative incumbent Sid Fraley.
In the riding of Essex-Windsor, incumbent NDP Stephen Langdon fought off a strong challenge from Liberal Ray Robinette, winning his seat by 1,236 votes.
In Essex-Kent, the former mayor of Kingsville and a high school teacher, Jerry Pickard, defeated Jim Caldwell, the incumbent.
As we just mentioned, there was that upset in Essex-Kent as Conservative incumbent Jim Caldwell went down to defeat after serving just one term. The man who stopped him was Liberal Jerry Pickard, a former mayor of Kingsville. You can see the final margin there, Pickard winning by over 6,000 votes. The NDP candidate John Coggins was a distant third. Caldwell blames his defeat on farmers' fear of the free trade agreement.
Well, I think that probably the free trade issue, I think there's a lot of people that still had some major concerns about it, especially in this area. And maybe we didn't do as good enough a job as trying to explain that there wasn't the fears there that they had to be. But I mean, the people decide themselves. I don't disagree with what they've done.
Sarnia-Lambton Conservative Ken James is going back to Ottawa. He beat Liberal Joe Foreman by over 6,000 votes. He says he owes his victory to weak arguments by his opponents against the free trade deal.
I think what happened is that they raised the issue to a point where we were able to go to work on it, and for a while we were fighting shadows, but when they brought it out into the open as to what they thought the issues were in free trade, gave us a chance to go straight at it.
It was a tight race for much of the evening in Essex-Windsor, but in the end, New Democrat incumbent Stephen Langdon was re-elected. Liberal challenger Ray Robinette was less than 2,000 votes behind him, though. Robinette says he didn't receive his support in the rural areas that he had expected, and he adds that he is proud of the way he and his supporters handled the campaign.
There's no disgrace at all in this for me. I went to this campaign with certain issues in mind that I felt strongly about. I didn't win, maybe on some of those issues, but I didn't lose either because I kept my own self-respect and integrity and that of my family throughout the campaign, and I feel pleased with that. I wish Mr. Langdon all the best in the next few years, however long they may be.
Members of Percy's panel have been keeping a close eye on the national picture all evening. I'm sure they have some thoughts to share with us now. Percy?
Thank you, David. Well, national picture as well as the local picture. In this case, Ray Robinette was there. One of the big issues in his riding was the New Democrats for Life. And they took out ads, they made people think about abortion and the NDP policy on abortion. Was that a factor at all in that race? It doesn't seem so if Langdon got back in.
No, I don't think so. And to give Ray his due, he didn't try to make it into the kind of issue that group did. I mean, there was some real strong ethical questions there. That group was very fanatical, did some things that I found very offensive to the democratic process in terms of using our name when they shouldn't have been, and all the rest of it. Again, I give Mr. Robinette his real due because he didn't try to use it. To answer your basic question, though, Perce, I don't think it had any difference whatsoever. They had a battle. The issue was there. Ray was certainly seen as a person who was in favor of the pro-life position. Stephen was seen as very clearly a person in favor of the pro-choice. But the bottom line was that I don't think it made any difference at all in this election.
Brian, the same thing held in Windsor St. Clair as well, did it not?
Absolutely. I'd have to agree with Joe. I think the pro-life lobby in Windsor was largely irrelevant. The reason that the two New Democrats were re-elected is because of that Tory vote at 17% and 18% in both ridings. It's a simple message. That vote would have gone Liberal, but it held for the Tories at 17%. That's too high and against the traditional voting patterns that we've seen in Essex County. So it's a simple message tonight in Windsor and Essex County.
Well, Bob, what do you think? What about that Tory vote?
No, I don't think. The Tory vote was 17 and 18%. I think it's a tremendous base to build on in the future. And, you know, I think the Conservative Party in this area has got a lot of work to do, but they will be around again, and we're going to come back, and you're going to see a Conservative elected in the next federal election.
But you won't have free trade as an issue to
it
give
doesn't
you 17%
matter. I think,
of the vote, Bob.
I think people in Windsor are beginning to realize that the parties of the past, a man who's been elected for over 25 years,
Brian
might not
Mulrooney,
be in touch
if Mulrooney
with the new
continues to write
generation.
off Windsor, how do you expect to build on 17%? It's not going down from 17.
He has not written off Windsor.
We didn't even see him in the campaign.
You're going to see him quite frequently in the next
When's
4 years.
When's he coming next?
Within the next 4 years, I can guarantee this one.
Well, that'll be
you
one
will see
visit
him.
in 8 years. Not bad for a city the size of Windsor.
No. Brian, you know, the whole point of the game is we formed the government. We didn't do
Without
as well
the help
as
of Windsor.
No, well, we would like to do better in Windsor. We will do better in Windsor, Brian, and we look forward to the next election.
Well, you mentioned somebody there for 25 years out of touch with the people. You weren't talking about Herb Gray, were you?
Well, what I'm getting at is Mr. Gray's been around for 25 years or so, and you wonder if there's nobody a little younger, or there might be new blood that might come in there. The Liberal Party, that's one of their problems.
Herb Gray's got 15 good years ahead of him, Bob. You won't get rid of him that easy. He's got a lot of spirit left.
And then it'll be a new Democrat win anyway.
I would certainly hope not.
Speaking about getting rid of people, panel, I think we just get rid of ourselves because we're out of time once again. We have to go back to the desk.
Thank you, panel. Let's take a look now at how the popular vote shaped up in southwestern Ontario. Very close between the